In a scathing new ruling, a federal judge is harshly criticizing President Trump's lawsuit against the IRS, arguing it was brought in bad faith and for an improper purpose. You'll remember Trump sued his own administration in January over the leak of his tax returns and then struck an agreement with the IRS in late May to create a $1.776 billion so-called anti-weaponization fund intended to help Trump's political supporters, including those who attacked police officers on January 6th. In her 56-page decision yesterday, the judge determined lawyers on both sides of the case, including Trump's attorneys and lawyers for the Justice Department and IRS, tried to manipulate the judicial process. The judge referred one Trump attorney to the Florida bar for possible disciplinary action and also sent her order to the New York bar, where Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche is a member. The DOJ spokesperson issued a statement on the ruling that reads in part, "There was no collusion in this case, and the partisan judge who speculated otherwise has disregarded decades of precedent." Joining us now, former U.S. Attorney and MS Now legal analyst Barbara McQuade. Barbara, good morning. The tell always is when they attack the credentials of the judge because they can't do it on the evidence. But my goodness, this ruling not just called the entire case improper, but went after the attorneys who prosecuted it and the relationship between the White House and the Justice Department.
Yes, and I love the callback to no collusion. That's an oldie but a goodie. And of course, collusion isn't really the point. It's that there is no arm's length in this relationship here. There is a conflict of interest because, as the judge said, Donald Trump is the plaintiff and Donald Trump is the defendant. She even cites the new Slaughter case decided by the Supreme Court, citing the unitary executive theory. If the president is allowed to fire anybody in the executive branch, including the head of the IRS and the head of the Treasury Department, then when he sues those people, this is not an arm's length transaction. This is a conflict of interest. She also notes a couple other interesting things, Willie. That is, she actually raised this issue while the lawsuit was pending. And 2 days before briefs were due to explain to her why this was a legitimate case over which a court has jurisdiction, they dismissed the case and instead negotiated this out-of-court settlement. She said that was a real tell that there was never any case or controversy here in the first place.
Barbara, we have sat through for years just looking at these asinine lawsuits being brought, and I would just look at it and say, who are the attorneys that are doing this? Because if I'd done that in Northwest Florida, I think the federal judges there would not only sanction me, they'd probably put me under jail for a week for being in contempt. I actually see this as a really positive step forward. These are officers of the court. They are not just dupes of Donald Trump. They are officers of the court. Do you see this as a positive step forward that a judge is finally treating them as officers of the court who, if they step over the line, are going to be possibly sanctioned by the bar?
I do, because I think that kind of response could have a deterrent effect on lawyers who feel like they're able to get away with it. As you know, Joe, there is a specific law that forbids lawyers from engaging in conflicts of interest, and she cites that rule when she makes these referrals. I think the other thing that's important here is Todd Blanche getting quite a bit of comeuppance here, where she refers to him as misleading at best and disingenuous at worst based on the testimony he gave to Congress last month. He, of course, is facing confirmation hearings this week. And I think this court gives a lot of good ammunition to the senators who will be asking questions to explain to the American people just what was so awful about this. They attempted, as the court says, to manipulate the process and use the court to legitimize what was otherwise an improper payout to Donald Trump. There's, of course, the slush fund, but she also notes that this was potentially a $100 million gift in the form of immunity from tax audits to Donald Trump himself. And so I think that we're going to hear a lot of questions about this during those confirmation hearings.
Those hearings coming up tomorrow and the day after should be fascinating. MS Now legal analyst Barbara McQuade. Barbara, thanks as always.